So Wendy's and my days probably vary, and then our days also look very different these days with COVID-19 being so prevalent in our lives. So pre COVID-19, my typical day was driving around the northern side of Chicago and seeing families in their homes, providing speech and oral rehab therapy. And that therapy still looks the same today. It's just over a computer now, is focused on coaching families on how best to support their child's listening and language development. And then outside of that, this is also has looked slightly different these days, but is still occurring in our Wooddale location. I would also be providing a toddler oral rehabilitation group at our Chicago location that happened twice a week. And that is designed for toddlers and their caregivers. And same thing as the home-based therapy and now the teletherapy I'm providing these days. That group is really focused on parent coaching. So it's less of what you might imagine like a preschool setting where a child goes into the group on their own and is more where the parent or caregiver is with their child throughout the course of the entire group, learning strategies within the group routine that they can then carry over at home. And then outside of that, as you mentioned when you were introducing us, occasionally doing like initial evaluations for kids that are just entering the early intervention system. So these days there's a lot less driving, but I'm still doing a lot of parent coaching. It's just over a computer.
That's so interesting that it sounds like the parents are the main member of your team, because I think that in other settings, we always have to remind ourselves like the parent is the most important team member, but really in this case, like they are your team member. They're almost like your co-treater because they're the person who is learning all of the strategies to carry over for the week. And so that's very cool that that's a huge focus with this population.
Yeah, and I something that I'm really curious about as we talk more about parents and just the whole team is so as a group, you do not do ASL, correct? This is purely spoken language.
Correct. Yeah, we are a listening and spoken language program. So all of the children have hearing aids or cochlear implants, depending on what technology they need. We have had a couple of children in the program that have auditory neuropathy spectrum disorder that possibly do not wear amplification or are in the process of getting amplification. But everybody has some form of amplification because in order to utilize the listening and spoken language approach, you do have to have, adequate access to sound. So sometimes kids are working through that process, but the families have chosen listening and spoken language as their primary mode of communication for their child. So that's what we provide for the families. We don't, a lot of times, we help families sort of find the modality that fits for them. We don't say to them, this is what you should do. We're there for when families make the decision to use listening and spoken language. And I will say, with a lot of our children in early intervention, they're using some gestures and signs, signing more and milk and I want that. And, those things are not going to inhibit a child's ability to learn spoken language. So we would never tell a family to stop doing what they're doing at home because it goes against, our philosophy in early intervention. It's all about communication